Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Donald Trump and his transition team have been blocked. They are not getting security briefings and are not getting access to government agencies. Top Trump supporters are infuriated.
I think it's time to give this guy a month of peace and let the process play out.
But that process has been stalled because of Donald Trump himself. As USA Today reports, Trump still hasn't signed agreements, including ethics pledges, to begin transition of power, White House says. And Washington Examiner, Trump transition team bypassing FBI background checks on cabinet picks.
He's got to sign the agreements that trigger these things. And I think, look,
it's been
part of his
2
problem
weeks.
is he doesn't like, well, he's had enough time to name all these people, but not enough time to sign a piece of paper or to have Linda McMahon or Howard Lutnick sign a piece of paper. Look, here's the thing, John. He doesn't trust the FBI. So he doesn't want the FBI doing these background checks. And by the way,
he wants to vet the FBI, not have the FBI vet.
If I had Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Pete Hegseth with some of those background issues that they have, I wouldn't necessarily want the FBI looking around either.
Pete Hegseth, the Fox News Weekend host nominated as Secretary of Defense, has been accused of rape. Hegseth also allegedly had multiple affairs in his 3 different marriages. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the HHS nominee, has admitted to rampant marital infidelity as well as heroin abuse. Democratic lawmaker Jasmine Crockett says Trump's motivation in bypassing background checks is clear.
He doesn't want background checks, and he's not decided to put people in that are qualified. I mean, and not to mention, this has to be a historic number of people that have been accused of sexual assault or some type of sexual misconduct in some way.
And that kind of background, as Crockett noted, would disqualify junior-level staffers from getting a government job. But at the moment, the Trump team is signaling that the bar should be lower for cabinet nominees than for everybody else.
If you are going to work in one of these agencies, you will have to be most likely vetted to a higher level than the person that's running that agency. That's a problem. But for whatever reason with this team, it doesn't seem like it's a problem. He's absolutely deciding that he wants loyalists. This is something that Project 2025 talked about. It was about putting the most loyal people into position. It wasn't about making sure that you had the most qualified people in position.
Senate Democrats say that without the background checks, there can be no confirmation hearings or confirmation votes for Trump's cabinet nominees. Here's Minnesota's Amy Klobuchar.
If we do not have an agreement for FBI background checks, as far as I know, the Transition Committee has not made that agreement yet. This has been something that's going on back to Eisenhower's days. And when you look at some of the nominees and some of the issues with them, not all of them, but when you look at it, you have to be able to find out what went on. We require these background checks of line DEA agents, drug enforcement agents. We require it of first-time prosecutors for the federal government. Why wouldn't we get these background checks for the most important job in the United States government? So if they keep delaying on these background checks, we will have a delay in getting these cabinet officials in. And I don't want to have a delay. I want to have the hearings. I want to make a decision on each one of them on the merits, as I've done in the past. And I can't do that without the background checks.
The key law governing background checks involves the Presidential Transition Act passed in 1963. The law says that a president can request nominee background investigations from the FBI when nominee names are announced. Well, given that Donald Trump has now announced all of his cabinet nominees, Democratic analysts say President Biden could request the background checks and deliver the information to the Senate.
The nominees' names have been announced, and if Trump isn't going to comply with the existing protocols and practices, then we should comply with it and ask the Senate and the White House to request it now.
How commonly is that done? Since you said the 1960s, it's been able to. I mean, there was legislation that said go ahead and do this, but how often does it get done?
Yeah, so again, no legislation passed by Congress. That's one of those things you can add to the list, Alex, a long list of things that need to get fixed because of the previous Trump administration still hasn't been fixed. So we look at the intent of the executive orders and the MOUs, and the intent is clear. The FBI has been doing this since Dwight Eisenhower. It's required to have a government background investigation for employment and especially for a security clearance, which all these nominees will have to have. And if Trump isn't going to do it, we are flying blind in terms of the Senate Judiciary, who really won't have the benefit of classified information and files, intercepts, foreign entanglements, and business transactions. A private firm can do none of that.
There is another part to the Presidential Transition Act that Donald Trump seems to be thumbing his nose at. Congress amended the 1963 law a few years ago to include a requirement that a president-elect sign an ethics pledge stating he or she will avoid conflicts of interest. That means Donald Trump, under the law, has to divest his business interests while in office or put his assets in a blind trust. The law, which passed with bipartisan support, came in the wake of ethical concerns during the first Trump administration. Watchdog groups identified more than 3,400 conflicts of interest tied to Mr. Trump, including holding political events and hosting foreign dignitaries at hotels and resorts he owned. It's not clear what, if anything, can be done to force Donald Trump to comply with the ethics law, but the punishment given his refusal to comply has begun. The Biden administration is refusing to give Donald Trump access to any classified intelligence and security briefings normally given to a president-elect. All of this is reportedly creating some tension between the Trump transition team and the Biden administration. But again, Donald Trump arguably only has himself to blame. In the meantime, to try and get his cabinet nominees in office on schedule, Donald Trump is pledging to use recess appointments if the Senate will not act. Under the Constitution, when the House and Senate are formally in adjournment, a president can fill government positions without a Senate confirmation vote. But adjourning both chambers in Congress requires a vote in each. And at the moment, it does not appear that Donald Trump has the support of enough Senate Republicans to formally adjourn the Senate and give him a recess appointment opportunity. Supreme Court case law is also against Donald Trump.
And the U.S. Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, said that Congress sets its own recesses and makes its own decisions. You already have Senator Thune, the incoming leader on the Republican side, making very clear that they don't have a vote to ram through people during these recess appointments, because in the end, it is the Republicans that are going to have to make a decision if these people are qualified for these jobs. They have the votes. They have over 51 votes right now in the Senate. So while it is our job under the Constitution to raise questions, to ask them where they stand on issues, to look at if what they're going to do, whether it's running the Justice Department or running the Health Department, if it's truly going to help the American people, that's our job. In the end, it's going to be the Republicans in the U.S. Senate, their decision about whether they want to put these people in place.
And at the moment, there are half a dozen Senate Republicans who agree with Democrats that hearings cannot begin until FBI background checks on the nominees have started. So it all means that the Trump transition is essentially stuck in purgatory. The president-elect and his nominees are not getting access to government agencies or security briefings, and that means their ability to hit the ground running and make policy changes in January is in jeopardy. I suppose Donald Trump will not care very much if his nominees get a late start, as long as his team is filled with loyalists that Trump wants. Still, it's all another reminder that loyalty to the Constitution and following federal laws are not Donald Trump priorities. Instead, Trump is prioritizing doing everything his way and telling the legislative branch, including the U.S. Senate, to get lost. The question is, will Senate Republicans go along with Trump and be a rubber stamp, or will the senators show some backbone? By the way, Georgia Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene now seems to be trying to blackmail members of her own party.
Here's what frustrates me. Washington, D.C. is full of secrets.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is angry and sad. She's been snubbed by Trump for a cabinet position. She doesn't want to share a bathroom with her trans colleague. And Greene's friend Matt Gaetz has been derailed by his own sexual misconduct,
including that he had sex with a minor.
So Greene is now threatening lawmakers in her own party.
And if they're going to roll out reports on Matt Gaetz, basically threatening him and forcing him out, then they need to release all the other secrets on everybody else. And that's what I'm having a hard time with today. I believe in truth and transparency, and I believe the American people deserve more. You know, there's these sexual harassment lawsuits that claims that were settled using taxpayer-funded dollars in these cases against lawmakers. And this has been known about for years, and that list is never been publicized.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular from Weil, who wrote, But she has no issue with Trump bragging about going into the changing room of teenage girls. I hear you. I look forward to reading your comments about Donald Trump and his team getting blocked from government agencies because Trump refuses to comply with federal ethics laws. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.